This video is for IXL A1.D.1. It is titled Convert Between Percents, Fractions, and Decimals. The 3-character code for this activity is Uniform Whiskey Lima. So our first question asks us, how do you write 68% as a fraction? Well, 68%, the percent sign here, whenever we see a percent sign, this actually means parts of 100. Parts of 100. That's what a percent sign means. You actually take the 1 from the 100. Let me go back and get rid of that. There we go. Let's kind of slant it a little bit and stick 2 zeros there, right? So that's one way to remember that a percent sign literally means parts of 100. So if I go ahead and take that concept of percent sign representing the words parts of 100, I could actually think of 68% as 68 parts of 100. And whenever we deal with fractions, because it's asking us to write it as a fraction, whenever we write a fraction, we have a numerator over a denominator. And in this case, the numerator represents the part, and the denominator represents the whole. So if we had a circle here, I'm going to draw a rough circle here, and we split it into 4 equal pieces, and we had 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces of it, and we were to shade 1, 2, 3 pieces of it, we would say how much of the circle is shaded. Well, 3 of the 4 parts, there are 3 parts that we're talking about here that are shaded, and the whole thing has 4 parts in it. So let's take this concept of parts and whole, 68 parts of, put an S on there, I guess, 68 parts of 100. So the parts goes at the top, and the whole goes at the bottom, which is 100. So we would write this as 68 over 100. Now, 68 and 100 are both even numbers. We could simplify this. IXL, I believe, on this activity will let you write it as a unsimplified fraction, so you could just put it as 68 over 100. If you really wanted to get in, I think it'll divide by 4. Yes, 68 will divide by 4. 68 divided by 4 goes in once. 4, 2, 8, what is that, 7? Yep, so we could write this as 68 divided by 4 is 17, and 100 divided by 4 is 25. So we could simplify that to 17 over 25. But for the purpose of this activity, if you want to just put 68 over 100 in there, you could. So 68%, 68 parts of 100, or 68 over 100. How do you write 70% as a decimal? Well, on this case here, let's go ahead and write it as a fraction first. We already know that the percent is parts of 100. So let's do 70 parts of 100, because remember the numerator is the parts and the denominator is the whole, and the whole thing here, we're talking about the whole in this case, is 100 parts. So if I had you read this to me, this fraction, how would we read that? We would read it as 70 100ths. Well, they want it as a decimal. So if we think about place value with numbers, right, here we have the ones place, and here we have the tenths place, 10 THS. Here we have the 100ths place, THS, and here we have the 1000ths place, 1000ths THS. So if we're talking about 70 100ths, then where would we want to put that number there? So I was thinking, oh, we'll put the 7 there, but not actually. So in this case, whenever we write this, if we write 0.70, right, then we read it to the decimal place. Here is 100ths, THS, and this number is 70, so we would read that as 70 100ths. So indeed, 70%, or 70 parts of 100, then write that as a decimal, 0.70 or 70 100ths, and then we could simplify that further and just drop that 0 off the end and have it as 0.7. Now, you might say, well, there's a shortcut for that. I know it, you just move the decimal over, right? So if we have 70%, 70 is a number, would have the decimal here. And we're going to move the decimal over 2 places to the left, and we would get 0.7. And so indeed, that would be the correct answer also. Now, I have a little memory device that I kind of like to use on the whole decimal moving thing. And that is, if we're going from a decimal to a percent, so a decimal to a percent, well, alphabetically, if we started over here and went A, B, C, D, then E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, we would come to D first as we read from right to left, and then we would come to P later on after that. So we would have to read going from left to right to go from D to P. And whenever you move the decimal those 2 places to change a decimal to a percentage, then the decimal moves 2 places to the right. Now, if we were going from a percentage to a decimal, you would have to move along that alphabetical, if you could think of it as an alphabetical number line, or you could think of, oh, I'm at P, I got to go back to D. So likewise, if we're going from a percentage to a decimal, then we're going to move that decimal back 2 places. So here's a decimal 70%. We're going from a P for percent to D for decimal. So we have to go back 2 places, and it would be 0.7. So this is a little memory device here. You might want to go ahead and kind of hang on to that idea. It seems to work pretty well, but I did want to explain the whole place value of going from a percent to a fraction, fraction to a decimal, and then of course dropping the 0 off of the end there. All right, how do you write 0.8 as a percentage? Well, if we think about this, if we were to read this, the 8 is in the tenths place, so we would say, oh, that's 8 tenths. But we want it as a percentage, so that means parts of 100. So we would have to have a fraction that is equivalent to 8 tenths that has a denominator of 100, because we want to talk about 100 parts. And if we're going to multiply 10 times 10, then we need to multiply the numerator 8 times 10 as well, and end up with 80 over 100. So here it is as a fraction, right? I went from a decimal to a fraction by considering its place value. I got to parts of 100 using the idea of equivalent fractions, but they want it as a percentage. So in this case, 80 parts of 100, or 80 parts of 100. Now, in this case, I'm going from a decimal to a percent, so I would want to go from left to right. So I move the decimal from the left and go to the right 2 places. I'm going to need a 0 there, and sure enough, I end up with 80, and I need to throw the percent sign on the end for 80%. How do you write 5 tenths as a percentage? Well, we could do this a couple ways. Let's go ahead and write 5 over 10, and then go ahead and realize that, okay, I need a equivalent fraction that has a denominator of 100, because I want to get to a percentage, which means parts of 100. So if I'm going to multiply 10 times 10 to get to 100, then I need to multiply the 5 times 10 to get to 50, and I end up with 50 over 100, or I have 50 parts of 100, or 50%. Now, another way you could have done this, if you did 5 divided by 10 on a calculator, if you just type in 5 divided by 10, you would end up with 0.5, and then you just change the fraction into a decimal. Now, if you're going from decimal to percent, right, you need to go from left to right, so move the decimal over 2 places, throw a 0 on the end, throw up your percent sign, and you would still have that same 50%. How do you write 152% as a fraction, mixed number, or a whole number? Well, we could look at that percent sign and realize, oh, that's parts of 100. So I have 152 parts of 100. And I now realize that this is an improper fraction. The numerator has a greater value than the denominator. So in this case, 100 will go into 152 once. The remainder would be 52, and our denominator would still be 100. And we now have a mixed number, so this would qualify as a correct answer. So we could put in 1, and 52 over 100 is a mixed number. We could also simplify this, right? 52 and 100 are both divisible by, we know they're divisible by 2. I think, yep, they're divisible by 4 as well. So 52 divided by 4, well, 10 4s will be 40. That would leave me with another 12, and I'd need 3 more. So it should be 13. And 100 divided by 4 is going to be 25. And 13 is prime, and it won't go into 25, so I know I'm good. This is the simplified version here. So we could put in also 1 and 13 25ths. There's another way we could have done this, right? We're a percentage, so we have a percent. Let's go to a decimal instead. So let's move to the left and make it a decimal. So start here, 1, 2, and we end up with 1.52. Well, this is a decimal, and we need a fraction, mixed number, or whole number. Whole numbers are not decimals. So we need to get to a mixed number. So if you wanted to, you could realize, okay, the 1 from the ones place is our integer that goes with the whole number. And then 52 100ths. 52 100ths. And you're right back to where you were here. And then you could go ahead and again simplify it to 13 over 25. So a couple ways of doing that one. How do you write 100% as a decimal? So we're going from a percent to a decimal. That means we're going to move the decimal from the right going left. So find that decimal spot, 1, 2, and we end up with 1.00, which is the same as 1. 100% as a decimal is 1. If you really want a decimal in there, you throw a 0.0 in there. How do you write 0.7% as a percentage? So a decimal to a percent. Now let's just go and start taking that shortcut. Move the decimal over 2 places. We need to throw a 0 on there. So we'd have 70, and then throw a percent sign on the end. 70%. How do you write 13/20ths as a percentage? Well, let's go ahead and use this first. We can do this a couple ways. First, we'll do the concept of equivalent fractions, and then we'll take the concept of every fraction is a division problem, and we'll get a decimal number. We'll see how that works out. So first, 13 over 20. Well, let's get to a percent. So parts of 100, right? Well, 20 times what? 5 is 100. So let's multiply 13 times 5 as well. And that's going to be, what, 50, 65? So 65 100ths, or 65 parts of 100. So 65%. Now, you could have gone ahead and taken this fraction here and turn it into a division problem on the calculator. Just do 13 divided by 20. Remember, the numerator is getting divided by the denominator. And if you did that, you would get an answer of 0.65. So then you would have a decimal that you want to go to a percentage. So you're going to move the decimal over 2 places to the right. 1, 2. So you end up with 65 and throw a percent sign on the end, and you still end up at 65%. So whether you do equivalent fractions or whether you consider the fraction to be a division problem and then come up with a decimal number and then go decimal to percentage. How do you write 7.00 as a percent? So I have a decimal number. I am going to a percent, so let's move the decimal to the right. So I need to go 1, 2. So the decimal would now be after the second 0 here, or between these 2 zeros. So we just have 700.0, but we really don't need that 0.0 on there. And percent, throw that percent sign on the end. And the answer is 700%. Just like 1 is 100%, 2 is 200%, 5 is 500%, and likewise 7 is 700%. How do you write 180% as a fraction, mixed number, or a whole number? Well, let's go with that improper fraction concept first. 180, well, hold on. Don't want that. I want a fraction. 180%, or 180 parts of 100. Well, this is an improper fraction. 100 will go into 180 once. The remainder is 80, and still use that same denominator of 100. And 80 and 100 are both divisible by 20. So, yeah, I think 20 is the best one. So we're going to go 80 divided by 20 is 4. 100 divided by 20 is 5. So 1 4/5. This indeed is a mixed number, so that works for us. Now, what was the other way? Oh, we can move the decimal, right? So if we take 180%, and we are going to go from a percent to a decimal. So we're going to the left. So move the decimal over 1, 2 places. They like the sound effects. And we end up with, we'll just say 1.8. And then we could go ahead and write this as a mixed number. 1 and the 8 is in the tenths place. 8/10. And then we could simplify that even further. 8 will divide by 2, and that's 4. 10 will divide by 2, that's 5. We still come up with the same 1 4/5. How do you write 19/25 as a percentage? So let's go ahead and try the equivalent fraction concept. 1 over 25, and we want a equivalent fraction that has a denominator of 100 because we want, that's right, parts of 100, which is a percentage. So 25 times 4 to get to 100, so multiply 19 times 4. Now 19 times 20 is 80, so let's back off 4. That should be 76. All right, I will double check that. 19 by 4. I'm pretty sure it's 76. 19 by 4. Indeed it is 76. Had to double check my mental math there. So 76 parts of 100, 76 parts of 100. So 76%. Now you could have gone ahead and tried the 19 divided by 25 on a calculator, and that would give you 0.76. And then to get from a decimal to a percentage, move that decimal over 2 places to where you end up with 76, and then throw the percent sign on the end. Final question, how do you write 564.5% as a decimal? Well, we are going from a percent to a decimal, so we're going to go move that decimal back 2 places to the left. So we'll go 1, 2, and we'll end up with 5.645. Do we need a percent sign on the end? No, we're going from a percent to a decimal, so we're just going to leave it there. 5.645. All right, and that concludes all of my examples for IXL A1.D.1 Convert between percents, fractions, and decimals. Good luck with your activity.